Silicon Valley is an area in Northern California's San Francisco Bay Area that acts as a global hub for advanced technology, creativity, and social networking sites. It basically correlates to the geographical Santa Clara Valley. Despite recent boundary expansion, San Juan is the valley's largest city, the third largest in California, and the 10th largest in the United States. Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Redwood City, Cupertino, Santa Clara, Mountain View, and Sunnyvale are some of the other Silicon Valley communities. The term silicon initially referred to the region's huge number of innovators and manufacturers specialized in silicon-based transistors and integrated circuit chips. A strong science, technology, engineering, and mathematics or STEM research base headquartered at local institutions, copious venture financing, and consistent U.S. Department of Defense expenditure all contributed to the formation of Silicon Valley. Leadership from Stanford University was notably significant in the valley's early growth. Stanford University's administrators regarded its mission as a service to the West in the 1890s and constructed the institution accordingly. Simultaneously, the perceived exploration in the West by Eastern interests drove booster-like attempts to construct self-sufficient local industry, and so regionalism helped link Stanford's objectives with those of the area's high-tech enterprises over the first 50 years of Silicon Valley's growth. Frederick Terman, Stanford's Dean of Engineering and Provost, pushed faculty and alumni to launch their own businesses throughout the 1940s and 1950s. He is recognized with helping to grow Hewlett-Packard, Varian Associates, and other high-tech companies. Terman is often regarded as the father of Silicon Valley. In 1953, William Shockley, the inventor of the transistor, quit Bell Laboratories due to disagreements over how the transistor should be handled. After briefly returning to California Institute of Technology, Shockley relocated to Mountain View, California in 1956 and established Shockley Semiconductor Laboratory. Unlike many other researchers who utilized germanium as a semiconductor material, Shockley thought that silicon was the superior material for creating transistors. Shockley sought to replace the present transistor with the new three-element design known as the Shockley diode, but the device was far more complex to construct than the basic transistor at the time. Shockley chose to discontinue his research on the silicon transistor a year later. Due to Shockley's aggressive management style, 8 engineers resigned to start Fairchild Semiconductor. Shockley dubbed them the Traitorous Eight. Fairchild Semiconductor's first staff members, Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore, would go on to establish Intel. In 1959, Bell Labs researchers Mohammed M. Atalia and Dawon Kang discovered the MOSFET, metal oxide silicon field effect transistor. The growing downsizing of MOS technology became the focus of RZA, Fairchild, Intel, and other semiconductor businesses experiencing the valley's technical and economic progress. J.C.R. Licklider, the first director of the Information Processing Techniques Office of the Pentagon's Advanced Research Projects Agency, sent an office memo to members and affiliates of the Intergalactic Computer Network on April 23, 1963. It postponed a conference in Palo Alto to discuss his concept of a computer network, which he envisioned as an electronic common available to all as the primary and important medium of information exchange for government, institutions, enterprises, and individuals. Licklider, as head of the IPTO from 1962 to 1964, was responsible for 3 fundamental advances in information technology: the establishment of computer science departments at numerous major universities, time sharing, and networking. His support of the notion in the late 1960s spawned a crude version of his vision called ARPANET, which evolved into a network of networks in the 1970s that became the Internet. Before we continue any further, I would like to welcome you all to Economic News. Please like the video and subscribe with all notifications turned on so that you won't miss any of our upcoming videos on the channel. Now, let us get back to the video. Another cause, such as the enormous exodus of Vietnamese boat people, led to major immigration to Silicon Valley, mainly by Asians, Hispanics, and Portuguese, who contributed to both the high-tech and industrial workforces. Santa Clara County's Asian American population increased from 43,000 in 1970 to 430,000 in 2000. At the same time period, the Hispanic population increased to 24% of the county and 30% of the San Jose population. The county's African American population stayed stable but increased somewhat to around 5%. The 1990 enlargement of the H-1B visa also played an influence. After Noyce's creation of the integrated circuit at Fairchild in 1959, and Atala and Kang's invention of the MOSFET at Bell Laboratories also in 1959, the first commercial MOS IC was introduced in 1964. The invention of the microprocessor resulted from the development of the MOS IC, which combined the capabilities of a computer central processing unit or CPU on a single integrated circuit. The Intel 4004, conceived and realized by Federico Fagin, Ted Hoff, Masatoshi Shima, and Stanley Mazur at Intel in 1971, was the first single-chip microprocessor. Intel released the Intel 8080 in April 1974, a chip-based computer, the first totally functional microprocessor. In the early 1970s, the valley was mostly populated by semiconductor industries. In the early 1970s, the region was dominated by semiconductor businesses, computer enterprises that use their hardware, and programming and service companies that serve both. There was plenty of industrial space available and housing was still reasonably priced. The rise of venture capital on Sand Hill Road, beginning with Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia Capital in 1972, drove expansion during this era. With Apple Computer's spectacular $1.3 billion initial public offering or IPO in December 1980, the availability of venture financing skyrocketed. Since the 1980s, Silicon Valley has had the world's highest concentration of venture capital businesses. Prior to 1970, the majority of Northern California lawyers were situated in San Francisco, particularly the skilled patent attorneys required by the high-tech sector to defend its intellectual property. Lawyers began to accompany venture investors down the peninsula in the 1970s to assist the booming high-tech sector in Silicon Valley. Wilson, Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati, a Palo Alto law firm, went from a dozen attorneys in 1975 to 700 by 2000, indicating the fast rise of Silicon Valley legal services. During this period, law firms moved from their traditional position as intellectual property guardians to become business counselors, middlemen, and deal makers, gaining remarkable importance in Silicon Valley. Despite the fact that semiconductors remain a significant component of the area's economy, Silicon Valley has been best known in recent years for breakthroughs in software and internet services. Silicon Valley has had a large impact on computer operating systems, software, and user interfaces. Throughout the early 1990s, the internet became more practical and gradually expanded. In 1995, the commercial usage of the internet increased significantly, and the first wave of online firms, including Amazon.com, eBay, and the forerunner to Craigslist, began operations. Silicon Valley is widely regarded as the epicenter of the dot-com boom, which began in the mid-1990s and ended when the Nasdaq stock market began to fall precipitously in April 2000. Real estate values reached historic highs during the boom era. Sand Hill Road was formerly home to the most expensive commercial real estate in the world, and the flourishing economy caused considerable traffic congestion. Since the dot-com bust, Silicon Valley has maintained its position as one of the world's leading research and development centers. According to a 2006 Wall Street Journal article, 12 of America's 20 most inventive communities are in California, with Silicon Valley accounting for 10 of them. San Jose topped the list with 3,867 utility patents submitted in 2005, while Sunnyvale came in second with 1,881 utility patents. Silicon Valley is also home to a considerable number of unicorn projects, which are startup firms valued at more than $1 billion. Thank you for watching this video. Please check out our other videos on the channel. Take care now and be safe.